Vidushis, and very enthusiastic, very keyed up, very motivated Rasikas and music students. நான் போய் இது ஒரு முத்துசாமி தீட்சிதர் சாகித்யம் கிருதி பாடினேன். I chose to sing this small snippet to illustrate that the issue of raga identification and the issue of raga delineation is not as simple as it seems to be. There are lots of points of deviations, variations, interpretations also. For the most part, it is a common shared idiom, this attempt of identifying ragas. But there are also going to be points of differences, opinions. This is essentially because our great classical tradition has a element of both the scientific systemic transmission as well as one of the oral tradition. The oral tradition is always going to be beset with problems of differences of padantara, of banis, etc. So we have to be able to embrace this variability also in the process of identification of ragas. We will touch that a little later, but I just wanted to tell you why I chose to sing this kriti, which I have learned from Vishwasar, which is this is in a raga called Isa Manohari. Pustakatha vera madri irukku. I chose to sing. I know both versions. I choose one. That's up to the artist. What starts off as a very thrilling endeavor and an entry into the Rasikatvam of Carnatic music, that is the thrill that one gets out of being able to identify a raga. It's a very tangible thrill. Correct? We all experience that thrill of the moment the artist starts singing or playing on an instrument, a kriti or a raga alapana. The idea that I can identify with what is going on stage or in the recording gives one a very legitimate thrill that is to be celebrated. It is an entry point and a very beautiful validation of the Rasika. So this you have to feel mighty proud about. Without an exchange of words, there is a system by which, a mechanism by which the Rasika is validated immediately. So it's a very, very beautiful system. So when we talk about the wisdom underlying and pinned and is emphasized by our classical traditions, one has to recognize this. We don't find such methods of validation in even modern music systems. So it is built into the wisdom of the Carnatic music system. So we owe a big namaskaram to the tradition. That's how Rasikatvam begins. And this can be a lifelong journey for a Rasika. This is the window through which, or the door through which you enter into Carnatic music. So it has to be celebrated, it has to be, so I really commend the thought and the brains behind this raga identification, especially R.P. Chari sir. His passion for increasing this the fold of Rasikas through raga identification is immense. I have known him for a long time and he has been passionate about carrying this out for many decades now. So big applause to sir, and we wish him a very speedy recovery from a surgery that he has undergone. Otherwise he would be there in the first stroke today. This is not a Lec-Dem or anything of that sort. The process of identifying ragas can be a very personal one. At the same time, there are a lot of things which we share in terms of how we come to identify ragas. One thing is very sure. The more you listen to with awareness, The more you share this awareness with people around you, this ability to relate to the raga and the raga name will grow. There is no end to this. Because the number of ragas is going to lakhs, the possibilities. And there are new ragas which can be found. And there are so many rare ragas which you never get to hear in one lifetime. So it's an ongoing process. Even for a very, very seasoned Vidwan, he or she is going to encounter ragas, many ragas, thousands of ragas, which he or she is not familiar with. So it's important to remember that out of these 40 ragas, if you have identified even 10 or 5, it's something to be proud of. It's also a very important marker and an indication as to how committed one is to the process of being a Rasika. In our system, being a Rasika is not a passive role. You have to be involved, you have to take your job seriously. Your role as a Rasika is as important as the role of a Kalakar or a Vidwan on stage. So it's a very, very beautiful system by which the Rasika is as empowered, or even Sangeeta Ratnakara, Sarangadeva says that the Rasika is at a higher status. He endows the Rasika with a higher status in the scheme of things, where, as the most important cog in the wheel of our great tradition. So listening Vidvat, we know of singing Vidvat. We talk about the Vidvat of the music students and the performers and the teachers. But here is a way by which the listening Vidvat, what we casually call as Keli Jnanam. Correct? நம்ம கேள்வி ஞானம் சொல்றோம். கேட்டு கேட்டு ஞானத்தை assimilate பண்றது. So that is also validated by this process. So the more you listen, the more you actively participate in the music as a Rasika, the better and more you develop in terms of this skill, the knack of identifying ragas. There are 3-4 things which happen when one tries to identify a raga. One is, if the rendition of the raga begins with an alapana, it's much tougher. Because you are given a melodic line to deal with which is abstract, which doesn't have the swara names. So you have to know how strong you are when you are identifying a raga on an alapana. That is the most difficult thing. To identify a raga when a kriti is being sung is just a matter of mapping two things and associating two things together. So if I sing Teliyaleru Rama Bhakti Madamunu Teliyaleru Rama Bhakti Madamunu Teliyaleru Rama Bhakti Madamunu Teliyaleru Rama Bhakti Madamunu. So idhila vandu neenga Dhenukan identify panna avlu periya karyam illa. You know that this Teliyaleru Rama and the raga Dhenuka are associated. So it is more a matter of a recollection, a recalling of this association. Correct? But if I sing na 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 this requires more skill, correct? Because what you have to do is take this melodic line which has no indication of the swaras. Of course, first you have to identify the adara subject. அது பண்ணாம அந்த ரெஃபரன்ஸ் பாயிண்ட் இல்லாம நம்ம ராகா பில்டப்பே இல்லை. You have to identify the adara subject. And then you have to be able to kind of in your own way swarapadithify. Swarapadithify na என்னது? அந்த melodic line வந்து na na na. If I sing that line, you have to be able to translate it into dani dani ga ma na 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 ma ma ba da da ma ga ma ri sa. So on the process mind la nadakkanum. Appo da these are the swaras of this raga And hence, you can identify then you are able to put two and two together and say, this Aroha Avroha I know as that of Dhenuka, and hence this is Dhenuka. I'm just going to the processes by which we identify. Okay, I'm just trying to articulate them. So, Ragathiland, Alapanalind identify pandrathu is the most clear indication that you know the raga and that you can identify the raga well. So once once you have this skill, identifying based on Aroha Avroha is the surest shot of identifying ragas. Sarima pada sani dapamagari. Correct? So நம்ம எனக்கு தெரியும் என்ன ராகம் இது சதிமா பதா சானி தபா மவதா நிதபமதாரி தரி தபமதாரி கரி சாதரி சரி. So I know that the Aroha Avrohana of Saveri தான் இது கரெக்டா? Yeah. Let me hear vociferous yes. Yes, okay. So this I know is the Aroha Avroha Saveri. So immediately I can make the connection. So in the Aroha Avroha Swarapadutharadhu, அது வந்து it's a very important step. Pamagari Rama Padava Dari 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 Da Padari Dari Da Pamadamada Di Dari 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 Da. Come on.
ரசிக பிரியா.
Yeah. So அந்த ஸ்வரம் தெரிஞ்சதுனால நம்மளுக்கு இந்த மாதிரி இந்த மேல வர்க்க ராகங்களை நம்மளால ரொம்ப ஈஸியா ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண முடியும். Correct? Generally, some ragas which have a little less ornamented, less gamaka and less swarupa based movement are easily identifiable by this method of Aroha Avroha. Correct? So if I take, for example, Sadiga ma pada ni Sadiga ma magari Sadiga Sadiga ma pada ni Sadiga Sadiga pada ma Padida ma magari da magari Sadiga Sadiga pada ni Sadiga magari da. So இது வந்து நடுப்பயிர்வினால் because the ragas, the notes are less adorned. There is less of gamakas. இதே வந்து ரக்தி ராகா பேஸ்டா இருந்தாலும் ரொம்ப கனராகமா இருந்தாலும் sometimes the swara approach may not be a foolproof approach. அங்கதான் வந்து there requires to be a larger listening experience of identifying the raga by its personality. The swarupa சொல்றோம் இல்லையா, raga swarupam. So the raga swarupa is established by what is called murchana, raga murchana. அந்த ரக்தி பிரயோகம் அந்த கனராக பிரயோகம் வச்சு நம்ம வந்து ஒரு நோட்லயே ரெண்டு நோட்லயே நம்மளால ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண ஒரு ஃப்ரேஸ்லயே ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண முடியும். Correct? How many of you are confident that you can identify a raga by just one phrase? Let me see a show of hands. One phrase. Of course, that phrase has to be rendered very well. Asal way or raga phrase a party identify பண்ணா that is not correct. That's not correct. Huh? Saramati. என்ன ராகம் சொல்றீங்க? correct, correct. So நீங்க மோக்ஷம் முகலதா மாதிரி சொல்றீங்களா சாரமதி மாதிரி சொல்றீங்களா? So the first line of the rag of the most very popular kriti sometimes paints the picture of the raga for you. So if I sing it slightly differently, it may take a little more time. சில ஆர்டிஸ்ட் இருக்கா கொஞ்சம் குசும்பா இருப்பா, they will play mischief. They will delay the revealing of the raga on purpose. It's like a game. Balaguli Sare சொல்லியிருக்கார். his philosophy was that he is to keep the listener on the edge of the seat as much as possible. This is one philosophy. So Ragata immediately reveal panamata. Let the audience be in suspense. Let them work a little harder. Our strategy. This was a different philosophy. Whereas my gurus, many of them say that chapter first phrase Raga identify panna, then it has been a successful rendition of the Ragas. So we have two different philosophies of the artists. You get the Ragamet, children. You get the Ragamet. Can you identify this as a raga? Because I can take so many turns. You might be expecting Saramati, but I am singing Hindu. Now it is clear. It will require two phrases. I can even delay this more. Because now the Rishabam and Panchamam reveal Panamate. Rigamapadani and the unique phrase of Saramati, I can delay it if I want to. So that is another thing. You should never commit to a raga unless you are sure of it. So, whereas, let me sing one note and let me see if you can identify the raga. Just one note. Me and my Guru Bandhus used to have this competition. When the artist is tuning the tambura, appalam tambura tune pannom. Ipo naan summa button inda padan turn pandren. Tambura tune pannan se naanga decide pannom. We will try to have a competition. Enna ragam paada poran. Inniki enna ragam varapodu. And you won't believe it. If the artist is tuned to the raga, and if as a keen student, I am also tuning myself to the artist's mind, there have been a lot of times when we have been able to guess what the first raga of the concert is. So that is zero note identification. I call it without a note being sung. That is a very different kind of tuning. It requires a certain ambience, a certain situation. But one note identification. Okay. So this has become a little more difficult. The reason is, if it was Kamboji, I will not begin this way. Kamboji is there in your head. So don't go by, don't be in a position where you have already decided. Be totally relaxed, be totally blank. And then you have to go through ragas which will begin on Panchama. Yes, Ananda Bhairavi is correct. Because you know that this raga's personality, the first explosion of the raga is Panchama. So under our tuning, three note phrase. Could be Kalyani, it could be Mohan. So you are going through a process of elimination. Correct? Kalyani, I would never sing this way. But it could be Kalyani because there are different ways of. That would be my Kalyani beginning. It will never be a plain Motte or Gandharam Purikamate. Opening Kalyani. Whereas in Mohanam, I will do it. So there are these various ways by which you can, in the first note, I will sing the same phrase. This is the phrase. வித்தியாசம் தெரியுதா உங்களுக்கு? Okay, so this requires a more subtle listening. The first was Mohana Kalyani. The second is Kalyani. Because that plain Gandhara Devata relationship, which I find in Mohana Kalyani, which is very, very, very good Rasika we find, is different from the Gandhara Devata relationship in Kalyani. Anyway, that is going a little deeper. But ஒரு பக்தி பிரயோகா வச்சு ரொம்ப ஈஸியா ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ண முடியும். My father, who was not trained in music at all, when I was very, very young, he could guess ragas, and I was a very intelligent music student when I was 8 and 9. He could identify ragas even before I could. I would have learned about 500 ragas by that time. The same 500 ragas he would identify much faster than I could. That's because what we call this Kevignam, this Alakshama relationship with the raga. That is all what he catered up. So Keda Surati, Nadanamakri, everything he will be able to identify in the first phrase itself. Whereas I am still at that time going through a process of elimination, deciding what are the notes of this raga, aroha and all that. So that process takes a little more time. But I will be more sure of it. Because mine is as a music student, I am being more scientific about it, more systematic about it, and not intuitive. So these two methods of being intuitive and systematic, both of them can feed your ability to identify ragas. Idam correct illa. Cheladukela idu romba upayogappadum, the intuitive way of alakshama identify pandrathu. Cheladela and the scientific method like ungala identify panna mudiyum. Am I correct? ஒரு பக்குலா பரணம்னா அதுக்கு ஒரு ஸ்வரூபம் சொல்றதுக்கு ஒண்ணு இல்லை. To the best of my knowledge. Of course, there are some kritis, it's a very beautiful raga. But our personality, old phrase, identify that raga has not evolved in that manner. That is, it's not a fault of the raga, it's our fault. So the raga is raga. Raga is just being there. It is a very big gift of Ishvara, that's all. What we do with it is up to us. That's why some ragas become very big, some ragas remain minor. Though I don't use the word minor, for this purpose I am using. I never have this distinction between a major raga and a minor raga. All ragas are so beautiful. It is we who are attaching or not attaching importance to a raga. That is all. At different times, different ragas are fashionable. During the stress time, apparently the scale of what we call today Kasirama, Kriyam, Panturani may not have been so popular. Karharapriya may not have been so popular. So we also have to remember that many new ragas are going to come in, many old ragas are going to go out. So this is a constant dynamic movement. Right? So that also when we identify ragas, we have to be correct? யாருக்காவது தெரியுமா? இந்த ராகம் பேர் விஷ்ணு பிரியா. உங்களுக்கு தெரியறதுக்கு வாய்ப்பில்லை unless you have heard Tanjavur Shankarayar's composition in this raga. So what I am saying is that ragas, new ragas are going to come in. Balamurti sir has created so many new ragas. I have composed so many new ragas. So every musician, depending on their inspirations, may come up with new ragas. You know? So definitely a raga like Mohana Kalyani, which is commonly accepted today, may have been a very new raga at some point in time. During Tyagaraja's time, he is said to have created 73 new ragas. Today we know that those are all absorbed into the mainstream. Correct? But at that time it was brand new. So remember that the raga identification also is a constantly changing process. So, அந்த மூர்ச்சனா அந்த ரக்தி பிரயோகா வச்சு ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்றது ரொம்ப சுகம். கேட்ட உடனே நமக்கு தெரியும். No. I will change my mind. So the artist can also, because that phrase is shared by both the ragas. So sometimes you have to wait for the second phrase. But there are na, 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 na. This is undoubtedly ahir. Na, 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 Is there a doubt? I've changed ragas, okay, by the way. Na, 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 ta. And Rama.
Vegada.
Vegada. Ta, ra, ra.
Sagana. Sagana.
Sahana. But ta, ra, 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 na, ra, ra. I want it down. So there are so many beautiful, absolutely mesmerizing ways in which phrases work within ragas. இதெல்லாம் படிச்சு லவுடா சொல்ல முடியும் without a doubt. Correct? சரியா இருக்கா பாக்குறது? The Gambiram and the Rasa. Sometimes the Rasa also will communicate itself in the first phrase. Rasa, the Gambiram will be communicated. Partner, it is more difficult for you to identify the phrase. This is more the rasa and the voice contour, the melodic descriptive entity that I am describing, much more than the notes. You know, it's like just like the features of the face. The face is much more than the features of the face. You know, the whole is much more than the parts that make up the whole. This is true. You know this basic philosophical premise? Yeah, you agree with it. So once I endow upon raga that status of an Ishvara, of a Devata, I have to be constantly aware of this. That the raga is the master. Raga is Devam. We don't simply say that raga Devata, sonna mattum poradhu. அந்த ராகத்துக்கு அந்த ஒரு பவ்யம், அந்த ஒரு ஸ்டேட்டஸ், அந்த ஒரு வர்ஷிப்ஃபுல் ஷ்ரைன் கொடுத்தா தான் இந்த வார்த்தைக்கு அர்த்தம். அதனால தான் எங்களுக்கு ராகம்லாம் பாடுறது பயமா இருக்கு. பிகாஸ் ராகம் நிறைய பாடியிருப்போம். பட் இட் இஸ் அப் டு தி ராகா டு பிளெஸ் மீ வெதர் ஐ வில் be able to represent her properly. So that is you have to always remind yourself that the raga is much bigger than the identifier. So you have to give it that status. Sometimes நமக்கு வந்து ஒரு ராகம் தெரியும், பட் அதே இது கொஞ்சம் ஸ்லைட்டா டீவியேட்டிங் ஆன மாதிரி ஒரு ராகம் டெலிமினேட் பண்ணலாம். You know, so sometimes it's easy to have a basket of ragas that are close to each other and know each of them for their special place. I'm just trying to give you strategies as to how to categorize ragas. Some ragas I know are you to be able to identify this is Sampurna raga. So if you are able to understand and identify that this is Sampurna raga, you only need to have a Merakarta chart with you. Sampurna Krama Sampurna raga. There are some Sampurna ragas which are not Krama. That will not be there in your 72 Mera Varga chart. Okay. So Krama Sampurna, Aroha, Avroha ragas, you can always master by constantly referring and learning from the chart. எல்லாருக்கும் தெரியும் இல்லையா, the 72 raga chart. If you want to expand further, there are 2-3 books, very very good books, which will by categorizing under each Mera Varga, so many ragas which appear under that. So under Mera Varga ragathoda characteristics and melodic movement which you can identify, you can learn to identify little more rarer ragas. Dazani ma gadi zadi ga mata zani ma gadi ma dazani ma gadi zadi zadi ga ma dazani ma gadi sa. So in the particular zadi ga ma dazani ma gadi sa. Jayamanogari namakku theriyum because you know it has come under the Kararapya Meda Varga, that it is related to Sriranjani, which is the more popular raga. And then you know that if the Nishada goes missing on the Aroha of Sriranjani, this is Jayamanogari. So this strategy of identifying a raga by virtue of what is not there. You can identify a raga by virtue of what is there, but you can also identify a raga by virtue of what is absent. And the Varjya Prayoga Salva. So the Varjya Prayoga theriyum. You know? Dani sada magari zari ga ma dani sada magari. Idhila vandu Nishada is missing on the Amroha. Ma magari zari ga ma dani zari ga magari sada magari ga magari sa. Idhila ragam. Raga theriyuma? Okay, this is a very rare raga called Bhagya Ranjani. So for you to know, so we all know Jayamanogari because there are kritis in that. So that's also something very important to remember. The raga becomes popular because there is a powerful kriti in it. Yajnadulu irukkarathnala namakku theriyum that there is Jayamanogari. But Bhagya Ranjanila kriti illathanala namakku selappa theriyama irukkalam. Okay, so it's the kriti or composition that validates the presence of a raga. That also you have to keep in mind. Identifying a raga by virtue of associating a composition with it is also very a common strategy. This works very well for ragas where there are not many compositions. Ekaika kriti raga nariyal. Ekaika kriti raga na theriyuma. And the ragathula ore oru kriti da irukku. Unless somebody wants to compose it. Just composing a kriti in a raga doesn't make it valid. Your generation has to sing it, the next generation has to take it up, see value in it and continue singing it. அப்போதான் அது kriti. நான் நானே ஒரு 1000 காம்போசிஷன் பண்ணி நானே பாடினா அதுக்கு வேலிடிட்டி இல்லை. மற்ற பேர்லாம் ஆஹா நல்லா இருக்கு, இது ராகபூர்வமா இருக்கு, சாகித்யத்தில் வேல்யூ இருக்கு, பாடினா தான் அதுக்கு மதிப்பு. This is something, it's like making your own sambar and enjoying it. You know, other people have to say that aha, this is very tasty. So it is like that. Ragas also work that way. Okay. So sometimes so because you know, so you know that this is Rasali Urali. Very much some of you know. Diga mabada nisa pa magari, nariza nisa pa magari, magariza padanisa. Diga mabada nisa pa magariza diga. Mabada nisa diga magari, sapa magari, mabada nisa nisa pa, sapa ma, sapa maga, sapa magari, magariza diga. In the ragam. Okay, you have to say here again another issue. This is Kirnavali of the Govindacharya or Tyagaraja's nomenclature. Sometimes we come into this nomenclature issue of whether a raga is Averi, Bhimplas, or Devagandharam or Karnataka Devagandhari, all issues of nomenclature and all issues of great confusion, all issues of great controversy. There need not be any controversy. Somebody may be known by two names, correct? Pichai ஒருத்தர் சொல்லுவார், வேற ஒருத்தர் அதே வந்து P.S. நாராயணசாமி சொல்லுவோம். நம்ம எல்லாம் சொல்றது C.P.S. நாராயணசாமி சொல்லுவோம். Somebody close to him who is a colleague may call him Pichai. I have a friend whose name is Kalyan Raman, but at home he is called Sriram. So initially when I used to go to his home, Sriram கத்துவாங்க உள்ள அம்மா நானும் திரும்பி பார்க்கிறேன். Then only I came to know that she was calling her son. I knew him only as Kalyan. So, Chelapo Ragathil rendu per irukkiradhu, it is not some ghor anyayam or something. It is okay for a raga sometimes to have two names. It is also sometimes very good to search for the name of the raga in the composition. Maybe or Sumadhyuti. Do you know the name? In Venkatamaki's scheme of Asampurna Melas, this raga comes under the name Sumadhyuti. So the Kusumadhyuti and the ragam pair vandu Kaumari Kusumadhyuti varum. And the way Dikshitar will always, almost always embed the raga mudra in the kriti. Even Siddhinayakam, we know as Shanmuga Priya, is not so. Chamaram. Strictly speaking. It's a raga called Chamaram. Chamaram. So, that's why Chanatra Viram and the pay. Himadi Tanayana Pankaja Hiranyagarbhaya Sumanase Umaramana Kumara Uruva Samana Vagodade Manasera Srivada Naya. So this is the Ragam. Himadritanayana Pankaja Hiranyagarbhaya Sumanase Umaramana Kumara Guru Vasamana Vagodase Manasera Asti. In the Ragam page? Navaroj. So, Umaramana, Kumara, Guru, Samana, Varoja Seva, Samana, Varoja Seva, Rumba, Araya Potura. So, sometimes you can identify the raga if you are careful enough. If you don't understand raga, especially if it's a Diksha Kriti, you can be sure that the name of the raga will happen in the course of the Kriti. So, other more strategy. Sometimes some ragas, especially Deshya ragas, is that there are a lot of classifications of ragas. If you are aware of them, the identification process becomes simple. Sampurna raga na identify panna. Audava raga, 5 notes tha irukku. Shadava raga, 6 notes in the Kramasam, Aroha, Avroha. So, idu mari Ghana raga. Ghana raga na namukku and the 6 or 7 Ghana ragas, that is the main ragas. Kalyani, Kamboji, Bhairavi, Todi, Shankaravanam. Idella nammalaala vandu like the back of your hand, you should be able to identify. Without a doubt, 100% sure, nammalaala identify panna mudiyanam. Only then you can call yourself raga identifier. Okay, so this is basic panna mudiyanam. A lot of the Rakti ragas, you have to train yourself to familiarize yourself with the Rakti prayogas, so that without a doubt you can say this is Surati, no, this is Devagandhari, no, this is not Arati, this is Sama. So, andamari closely related ragas nammalaala identify panna mudiyum. It comes very easily by repeated listening and relating to the murchana, the phrases of the raga. Sometimes identification by elimination, that this is definitely not that raga. So, if there are two close ragas, you are able to rule out one and then say this is the other one. These are all common strategies in our identification. This works in raga. So, to differentiate, you should know. So, in the phrase ga, ga, it is a re. You are probably expecting this, but this doesn't come. So, you know it is not. What is it not? It is not darbar. Correct? So, you are eliminating darbar from the possibilities. So, identifying ragas also follows rules of probabilities. So, subsets. So, if you are able to organize the raga frameworks in your mind as subsets, set subsets, and in terms of probability theory, like this is most probably this, most probably not, definitely not this. Andamari conditions, if you are able to think through, it becomes easier. And there's the idea of common ragas versus popular ragas. Acclimatize yourself with acclimatize yourself with trying to identify difficult ragas. Don't be happy with just identifying the ragas which you already know. You know? So in the Mari ragas, you have to try to identify ragas with a rare, you know. Of course, ultimately I am cutting short this, I am not demonstrating much. But one of the best ways to identify ragas, if you cannot, is to ask your neighbor. Sriram awadi thappa solluva, romba confident ah thappa solluva. Appo enna pannana left hand side first கேட்டிட்டா right hand side neighbor ட்ட verify பண்ணிக்கலாம். அவன் அந்த பக்கம் பார்க்கறதையோ காஃபி சாப்பிட போட்டு இவாள்கிட்ட கேட்டு ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணிக்கலாம், கன்ஃபார்ம் பண்ணிக்கலாம். ஓ இது this is definitely this is definitely Nayaki or something like that, you can confirm. But that process of being with fellow Rasikas is also very empowering. On the side, I will tell you, I know of some critics, of reviewers who write reviews, who ask their neighbors for names of ragas. So it can enhance your own understanding of ragas. Like I said, the process of raga identification is only the first stepping into this beautiful world of ragas. கேட்ட உடனே சில பேர் ஸ்விட்ச் ஆஃப் பண்ணிடுவா. கேட்டு ஐடென்டிஃபை பண்ணா அவ வேற முடிஞ்சதுன்னு நினைச்சு their minds will go wandering into other things. That should not happen. Then the whole purpose of identifying ragas is lost. The raga identification should lead you into the beauty of the raga. Should lead you into enjoying and enriching yourself with the beauty of the raga. Right? Identification is only the first step. So always keep that in mind, that you can be a Rasika only if you are enriched by the raga. You may not even know the raga, identify the raga, but you can still be a Rasika. You may know the raga very well, but you don't take the rasa, you don't carry with you the beautiful nada of the raga, then you cannot be a Rasika. So remember, just by identifying a raga, you don't become a Rasika. So you have to let yourself travel within the raga, know the kritis, know the various ways in which the raga can be sung, its infinite scope, the beauty that it reveals, the beauty that it fills your heart with and your mind and your intellect with. You know? So classical music is a very, very intellectually fulfilling enterprise. It is not just about enjoying and entertaining oneself. The brain is kept alive, the intellect is challenged all the time. In a kacheri, you will hear 15 ragas. Sometimes, some concerts, some artists, all of them can. So if you listen to the whole kacheri, it can be a very rewarding intellectual exercise. It can be a very rewarding artistic exercise, both together. Like I said, the number of ragas is almost infinite, because I can create a raga now. Sa pa ma re ga ma pa da ni sa, sa ni da pa ma ga re sa, from the Mela Varga of Haritamburi. I am just making this up. Because all Vakra Prayogas, Varjya Prayogas, in how many ever ways, even Janta Prayogas come to define the raga. Sa pa ma re ga ma pa da pa sa, sa da pa ma re sa. I can know this is also a valid raga. I just have to give it a name, and then I have to create a very beautiful composition, and then it can go forward. But the possibility is always there. So remember that the raga is king. You are the dasa. So remember to give that raga that kind of a very, very beautiful status, because it is so wonderful. It fills our lives with so much joy. Hope all of you had a fun morning in terms of identifying ragas. Wish you all the very best. Thank you. Om.